Within the gremlin-ridden community of Jujutsu Kaisen, there are three types of people. Gojo Glazers, Sukuna Glazers, and of course normal people who can enjoy a story without losing their damn heads over a damn drawing. Well, you get the point. When faced with the question of Heian form Sukuna versus Satoru Gojo without Mahoraga, both the Gojo and Sukuna Glazers each have their very own arguments. Gojo Glazers mainly argue everything would go the same, but Mahoraga wouldn't be there to save Sukuna from the effects of Infinite Void. Sukuna Glazers argue that everything would go the same, but Gojo would lose clashes number 3 and 4 instead of drawing, because Sukuna would be way more durable and better equipped to defend from Gojo's relentless attacks. In reality though, the Sukuna Glazers are actually absolutely correct, but they are also completely wrong. Okay, when I say it out loud, I am kind of realizing that doesn't sound simple at all, but it will make sense soon, trust me. You see, both approaches are actually totally flawed in that they both are built on the assumption everything would go down the exact same way, which I simply don't think would be the case. From a power scaling perspective, the Sukuna Glazers are definitely correct because they're just using the facts presented to us to draw a conclusion. However, fuck power scaling. In reality, a more logical and realistic approach is simply more accurate when it comes to determining a fight like this, which we will never see happen. It's literally all headcanon anyway. Also, RCD, aka reading comprehension deficit, definitely plagues both sides of this debate. For example, I always see comments saying, well, didn't Gojo say he would lose to Sukuna without Mahoraga too? No. He said it'd be damn close even if he didn't have Megami's 10 Shadows. How the fuck do you read the words damn close and then somehow come to the conclusion he's saying he would lose? Of course, they always counter this point with, oh, but Gojo's ego. Again, no. The whole point of this conversation with Geto in the airport is meant to be Gojo accepting defeat and finally being satisfied. Gojo even admits that Sukuna was crazy strong to Geto's face, which actually surprised him because of how honest it was. I'm not saying any of this proves that it would be a close fight, only that Gojo truthfully thought that it would be, which does also mean he genuinely believed he could lose to Sukuna too. In fact, I think this conversation with Geto, and a load of other things, is actually a deliberate choice by Gege to make Gojo versus Sukuna into a debate. Gege left it deliberately open-ended so that both Gojo and Sukuna fans can draw their own conclusions and decide who is stronger for themselves, meaning that there is no objectively correct answer. With all of the deep philosophical bullshit out of the way though, I'm now gonna actually explain why I think Heian form Sukuna versus Gojo would be a very close fight with endless possibilities and outcomes. Before I do that though, I just want to quickly address and shut down some smaller arguments that people make for Sukuna winning, since they will get in the way of my main argument if I leave them unresolved. Okay, first off, some people still think that Sukuna could have used his furnace against Gojo. And sure, once upon a time, this was a very valid argument. However, chapter 259 outright confirms that Sukuna could not use his flames against Satoru Gojo. There is literally an entire panel dedicated to explaining this, which included the statement Sukuna didn't have the freedom to unseal his flames. In order for the flames to be effective, Sukuna needs to kick up a load of thermobaric dust using cleave and dismantle, but because he had to reduce his range in order to break Gojo's barrier, there wasn't enough dust to use it. Many people also still think that Sukuna's range was normal in the first clash, which simply isn't true. From clash number 1 onwards, Malevolent Shrine was reduced to cover only Gojo's barrier in order to break it, and this is stated and shown in multiple panels, so if you still think otherwise, I'm sorry, but there's really no saving you at this point. Overall, Sukuna's furnace is completely out of the question when facing Satoru Gojo. Another redundant argument that comes up quite a lot is that without needing to take risk for Mahoraga to adapt, Sukuna would simply break Gojo's barrier way faster from the inside, especially after Gojo inverted his conditions. This argument was never really that strong because it's already been stated multiple times throughout the entire manga that locating the edge of a domain barrier from the inside is damn near impossible. However, some readers and Gojo himself actually seem to think that Sukuna might have the skill to do it, which was somewhat valid until chapter 262 dropped, which completely discredits this entire argument. In chapter 262, Yuta Okotsu clashes Infinite Void against Heian form Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine, and yet Sukuna still tried to break it from the outside. First of all, with no Mahoraga available, there was no risk-taking needed at all. But what seals the deal is that Sukuna outright states he wants to break the barrier and kill Yuta in under the normal 3 minutes. And this of course suggests that he genuinely intended to break the barrier as soon as possible, meaning that if he could break it faster from the inside, then he would have done it. And the final dumb argument that I want to address is the baseless claim that Heian form Sukuna is superior to Gojo in physical stats like strength and speed, as well as hand-to-hand combat skills. I mean, first off, Gege outright said that Geto and Gojo are the top 2 most skilled hand-to-hand combatants in the entire series. Secondly, if Gojo is blatantly stronger and faster than a 2-armed Sukuna, having a bit more muscle will push him closer but won't be enough to surpass the overpowered effects of Gojo's blue enhanced physicals. With only raw cursed energy, Gojo still kept pace with Megana very comfortably, not to mention the fact that Gojo fought off Maharaga, Megana, and Agito at the same time while Maharaga could touch him. And also, with blue active, Gojo was so fast that Sukuna was seeing after images. And of course, throughout the whole fight, Gojo was only hit once by Megana using domain amplification, but still managed to block his face and minimize the impact. The same can definitely not be said for Sukuna though, that guy took a beating in half. When it comes down to it, if Gojo was to fight Heian form Sukuna in a hand-to-hand battle without domains, then Gojo would win. End of story. I mean, sure, Heian form Sukuna would be more durable and challenging, but Gojo with blue is just still far superior in hand-to-hand and physicals. Anyway, with those less relevant arguments cleared up, it's time I finally address the main argument made by both Gojo and Sukuna Glazes, and why I think both arguments are totally unrealistic. Like I already said, assuming the fight plays out pretty much the same way, the Sukuna Glazes are definitely correct. Gojo won't be able to draw in Clash number 3 because Heian... Fuck! As I was saying, Gojo won't be able to draw in Clash number 3 because Heian form Sukuna only needs to defend himself from Gojo for literally just a second longer in order to win the clash instead of drawing, something he can definitely do thanks to his forearms and more durable body. Like I have also said though, I think making the assumption that the fight would go the same way is kinda dumb. Gojo had absolutely no intention of losing that fight, and Gege dedicated a massive part of this fight to making a point out of Gojo and Sukuna being far beyond the normal limits of Jujutsu. After losing Clash number 1, Gojo adapted and made an improvement where he inverted his barrier conditions, something that Kusakabe GPT claims should not be possible. Gojo also taught himself how to heal a burnt out curse technique, and he also adapted again in Clash number 3 when he finally reached equal footing with Sukuna's domain for 3 minutes by reducing his barrier to a basketball size. After doing all of this, he was then drawing with Megana instead of losing, so he kept doing it until Sukuna took so much damage that healing his body actually caused the healing of his curse technique to lag behind, which then led to Sukuna falling victim to Infinite Void. If Gojo was fighting Heian form Sukuna though, Gojo would lose Clash number 3 after 3 minutes instead of drawing. The really stupid assumption which I think Sukuna Glazers make here is that Gojo will simply do the same thing again in Clash number 4 instead of adapting and improvising like he had done the previous 2 times that he had lost. Do you really think that Satoru Gojo is so dumb that he would commit to something he already knows won't work? Because I definitely don't. Like I said, Gojo had no intentions of losing. We don't really know what it would be, but upon losing Clash number 3, Gojo would adapt and improvise again to try and rectify the issue. Although because we never saw it happen and don't know what he would have done to fix this, it's very hard to say if it would work or not. But the point that I'm trying to make is that he could find a new way of combating Malevolent Shrine. I mean, imagine he never inverted or shrunk his barrier. We literally would never have guessed that they were possibilities, so I don't see why the same logic shouldn't apply in this scenario. With so much emphasis on Gojo doing the impossible, it would be foolish to say that he was out of options and already used everything that he had. Am I saying this means Gojo would win, or even that Gojo's new improvisations would work? No. I am simply saying that Gojo won't keep fighting a losing battle without making improvements of his own, hence why the actual result of this fight is so unclear and so close. It really does have the potential to go either way. It's like what I was saying earlier, Gege did a very good job at writing this fight so that the real answer of who is stronger was actually never revealed and instead left open for interpretation. As cheesy and boring as it sounds, there is no wrong answer. If you are strongly in favor of Sukuna, then that's fine, and if you're strongly in favor of Gojo, then that's fine too. Basically, what I'm hoping you'll take away from this is that you don't need to get so worked up when someone has a different take than you. Each of you are justified, and excessively grilling someone for disagreeing is just toxic and childish. Debates are completely fine, but if everyone was a little bit more respectful of other people's opinions, then the JJK community would be a much more fun place. Anyway, that was basically my main point from a more objective standpoint. Now though, I think it's time I abandoned my unbiased views and then just tell you who I think is stronger and why. Also, spoiler alert, yeah, it's Gojo. Now, everything discussed previously was under the assumption that Heian Sukuna would still have the same information about Gojo's abilities. If you actually make this a fair fight though, and make it so that neither of them knows the secrets of each other's domains, then I think Sukuna is in a bit of trouble. After all, Sukuna does say himself that Infinite Void was a problem, so he decided his first move was getting rid of it. However, if Sukuna doesn't know what Infinite Void does, or that the only way to survive it is touching Gojo, then he's gonna struggle a lot more. After all it takes is 0.1 seconds of exposure to Infinite Void for Sukuna to outright lose without Maharaga. Turning off his sure hit inside of Gojo's barrier and then touching Gojo not only allowed Maharaga to adapt, but it also boosted his external output in order to break Gojo's small barrier in 3 minutes. It might not make a huge difference, but not knowing that he can do this means that Gojo's domain will likely last a bit longer than 3 minutes in that clash, giving him a decent chance to do some real damage and then potentially draw again. But I have to admit, this isn't really enough to say that Gojo would win, only that he wouldn't be at as much of a disadvantage as he was. Also, from a more objective standpoint, I think it's safe to say that Gojo's abilities are just damn right better than Sukuna's. If Gojo wasn't driven by a desire to defeat Sukuna by giving it his all, then he could have at least forced a stalemate by healing his burnt out curse technique and then using blue to leave the domain, something that the observers actually say was possible and something Gojo could definitely do with blue. It would be very long and boring and tedious, but eventually Sukuna would tire out. But obviously Gojo would never do this because his goal was to finally be able to give his all to a fight. In fact, Gojo choosing to wear Toji's outfit could actually symbolize this concept very well. When facing the awakened Gojo, Toji was self-aware enough to know that he would normally withdraw and then be more smart about handling him like he was in round 1. However, the temptation of challenging this monster head-on was too strong and it did ultimately lead to his death, which is pretty much exactly what happened to Gojo when facing Sukuna, but Gojo at least put up a bit more of a fight than Toji did. Contrary to this, some people think that Gojo was actually holding back in order to save Megami, but the short answer to this was no, Gojo was definitely not holding back. He really did intend to kill Sukuna and save Megami after they were already dead. The only way in which he did kind of hold back is that Gojo never went for the head because that would ruin any chances of saving Megami. You know, because you can't really use your brain to heal if you don't have one at all. Gege deliberately put massive emphasis on this by having Gojo stab Sukuna's chest when his head was wide open, and then outright saying that he was targeting other vital organs like the heart and lungs instead. This is also supported by the fact that Maki could have taken Sukuna's head off but went for the heart instead because they wanted to save Megami. And this again parallels Toji very nicely because Gojo made a huge point about Toji not taking off his head, and yet he deliberately didn't try and do that against Sukuna either so that he could yet again save Toji's son, Megami Fushiguro. This does not mean that Gojo wasn't going all out, it just means that he was targeting less fatal areas which would have made it a little bit tougher for Gojo. And if you disagree with this, then feel free to tell me why Gojo's hand was deep inside Sukuna's chest instead of his neck. I also just think for everybody else in the verse, Gojo is simply the tougher opponent compared to Sukuna. I mean, let's be real, if it was Gojo in Sukuna's position of the final villain, then he just kills everybody before Yuta can even turn up. That is just my incredibly biased take on it though. Please do not take that bit too seriously and instead focus on the important message that I was explaining earlier. Gojo versus Sukuna was left so that everybody can form their own opinion on it without there needing to be an objectively right answer. Getting angry or toxic towards someone else's opinion isn't necessary or justified. Anyway, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed. Feel free to join the Discord and follow me on Twitter, links below. Thank you guys for watching and please read Kagurabachi. Bye.